All right, good morning, everybody. It's Saturday morning. I know I'm the one that made the schedule, so I wanted to start at a different time later on Saturday. So welcome to day 2 of actually day 3, because day 1 is tutorial, but thank you everyone for coming.
That's day 0.
No, day 0 is when I picked everybody up at the airport. That was day 0. So this morning we have, for opening keynote, my longtime companion, Ed Winkler, and he's going to talk about what it's like to be crazy. And how we can all learn to cope with his problems. No, actually, that's a different presentation. You're doing this other one. All right. Ed's going to talk about all the stuff that he's been doing surrounding mental health issues in the developer community. I remember a long time ago when Ed said to me he wanted to start talking about this stuff on the podcast. And I know we had a very long conversation, and I said, "Are you sure that you want to talk about this?" Just simply because you never know how people are going to react to it, because there is quite a strong stigma surrounding a lot of these things. But and I said to Ed, "Well, whatever way you want to go on this, I'm there for you, and we're gonna take this thing as far as we can go." So it's like almost 2 years later.
More.
Is it more than 2 years? So ever since that start, Ed has been putting in a lot of time speaking at conferences, just spreading the news to help people understand about that mental health issues exist everywhere. You probably know people who are having problems. So just keep your eyes open and learn to recognize the signs, and more importantly, understand when people need help and understanding instead of ridicule and all that other stuff. So today's stuff ends at just after 6. I'm just going to talk for a little bit at the end. And then the after party is going to be over at, for those who know where the conference hotel is, so if you know the streets, it's right at the corner of Dairy and Argentia, so they're expecting us there like at 6:30 or something. So I hope to see a lot of you there to close things out. So without any further ado, let's turn it over to Ed.
Hello. All right. Y'all hear me okay? Y'all. I'm from Pennsylvania, you can tell. So my name's Ed Winkler. It's a very kind introduction by Chris. So name of this talk is right there, so I guess I don't need to repeat it. And this is True North PHP 2015, if you didn't remember that. A couple hashtags and all that stuff. So Stronger Than Fear, Mental Health and Developer Community. There's also an alternate title that Chris gave me that we can use as well. So who am I? Well, I'm sure you all know who I am. So, sorry, that was dumb. Anyway, but I'm a dad and I'm a husband. I'm a developer type, and I write music sometimes, and I'm a big nerd. But I have a mental illness or mental disorder or mental health issue that to use the words that you're most comfortable with. Now I'm not a doctor, not a psychologist. I don't have training in this kind of stuff and the background in it. I'm not any kind of necessarily an expert in this area, other than just my personal research on that kind of stuff. I am certified in mental health first aid, which is a course that I took, which we'll talk about at some point. But I am here trying to talk about what it's like to have a mental health issue, have a mental illness, have a mental disorder, and talk about it from my perspective. And then also get into a little bit about how it impacts us as developers, how it impacts our community, and things that we can do about that. So first off, I want to do a very informal survey, and this will require class participation. So I want you all to get excited and pumped up and ready to raise your hands and scream things out. So I'm curious, how many of you need glasses or contacts on a regular or semi-regular basis? Okay, so lots of you. This is a strange population. There's not as many as I would expect. There's apparently a small grouping over there of X-Men who do not need those kinds of things. But I'm curious. I'll ask you a question. Raise your hand if you are. Are any of you afraid to tell people about it? Ramsey, come on. That you do this. Have you ever had anyone say to you, kind of sit you down and say, you're not trying hard enough? Has anyone ever told you that? regarding glasses, contacts, that kind of thing? So no one has raised their hand. That's good. Have you tried squinting? Has anyone ever said that to you? Tried to fix that problem for you? So apparently not. No. So now let's talk about something that's a little more not as widely done, but a little more significant. Diabetes. I had a brother who had diabetes. My dad has type 2 diabetes as well. So I'm fucked. But I'm curious. I'll ask some of the same kinds of questions. Are you ever afraid? Would you be afraid to bring up diabetes, the topic of diabetes, with, say, a colleague, somebody, maybe not a stranger? So, hey, how you doing? Diabetes. But somebody who if it came up in conversation, would that be uncomfortable for you? Anybody? No. Okay. Yeah, maybe a little bit. Why would I talk about that? But if the comment comes up, not really a big deal. I mean, something that we're all kind of understand happens. Some people deal with that. And it's not like, oh my gosh, what did they do to cause that? Usually have some kind of understanding behind that. Now I'm curious about cancer, something that strikes a lot of people, affects a lot of people. I had a brother pass away from cancer this year. And I'm curious how many of us would be afraid, in that same scenario, you kind of imagine the person who you'd be talking to, would you be afraid to talk about cancer? Sure. I mean, it's not necessarily the most comfortable topic in the world. It can be hard. But we hear about it a lot, in public, in public media. It's a common thing in the culture. No one's really excited about it, but it is something that we all understand and fight to deal with. And our understanding of people who do fight it. Now I'm curious, you do not have to say you have one, that's fine. But I'm quite curious, how many of you, I want you to raise your hand, how many of you would feel comfortable talking to your boss about a mental health issue? So some, not a majority. I'd call that maybe 20%. How about a colleague? Somebody you work with directly is not directly over you. Okay, so a few more. How about a friend, family member, somebody you trust pretty well? So more folks, yeah. But not everybody. Not everybody would be comfortable with that. So I think that's interesting. I think it's interesting to kind of think about how we view these kinds of things. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the stuff that I deal with, the diagnoses that I have, and these are the things that I think describe the kinds of stuff that I deal with fairly well. I have a couple things, generalized anxiety disorder, and that is kind of what it sounds like, is that I have a disorder where I have anxiety responses, these stress responses that manifest as anxiety, but I have them kind of at times where they're not necessarily appropriate, and I have them, they tend to be more extreme, sometimes for not an obvious reason too. There's often sort of physical manifestations go with that. I get tightness in my chest, like right under my sternum. I'll get kind of sick to my stomach sometimes when it's really bad. I used to have IBS, and that was tied very closely to my anxiety. So when I would get anxious, I would feel very much like I had to go to the bathroom right now. And that, of course, causes this feedback loop where you're like, oh, well, if I'm not near a bathroom, I get anxious. And then if I get anxious, I feel like I have to go to the bathroom. So that kind of sucks. And I get scared to kind of go to new places and get into new situations where, particularly on my own, I don't like, a good example is that I do not like getting on public transportation, particularly buses, because I feel like the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get on there and I don't understand the pay system and I don't know why. Do I give them dollars? Do I have cash? Is there some kind of card? I don't know. And that is, to me, being put in that position where there's a bunch of people looking at me, and like maybe I'm slowing them down, I start thinking about that they're not going to like me and stuff like that. Being put in that situation makes me say, I'm out, I'm checking out of this situation, I'm not going to do that. Magically use my phone to make a car appear in 5 minutes, and it will then take me, and I don't have to figure that all out. And that is a reason why I don't like to take buses, and I much prefer things where it's the like potential where I overthink like what's going to happen and how people are all going to be upset at me. That it takes me out of that situation and pushes me into those other kinds of things. Now, if I'm with somebody else, I'm a lot better. But on my own, I get super freaked out about it. So those are all kinds of things. I spend a lot of time worrying about what's going to happen in the future, and I oftentimes spend time worrying about what I did in the past and being upset about that. And what if I did something different? And I spend very little time in the present. I also have something they called adult ADHD. I keep saying adult because it used to be that they kind of thought, well, that was only something that happened to kids. And for when I was first dealing with it, that was the thing. They called it adult ADHD as that was something that was different. I think I've had ADHD for a long time. But for me, and there's a couple different sort of variations on how they classify ADHD. For me, I have a lot of trouble focusing often. Kind of staying on task and staying focused on what I should be doing. I tend to avoid less appealing tasks, and I will put things off, and I'll put them off, and put them off to the extent that it can be really problematic. Like it really interferes with things, interferes with getting things done when I'm supposed to, or doing things when it's healthy and productive for me to do them. But that, by the way, also leads back to my anxiety, because then I get worried that I didn't do the thing. I have a low frustration threshold, so that I tend to get frustrated quickly with things, or with situations, or sometimes with people too. And that can be problematic, because it's like I get frustrated a lot faster than many other people do. My emotions tend to be intense. A lot of times I feel like they get so intense that I feel that I cannot make good decisions, because my emotions end up driving those decisions. And as a consequence, a lot of times when it gets really bad, I just have to separate myself and go in a place where I'm on my own and wait for it to calm down. Because if I don't do that, I'm going to say or do things that are destructive, non-productive, harmful to my relationships, to my personal, career, to my family, to people I interact with. I'm also really, really good at constructing bad outcomes, which strangely is also useful as a developer. But I'm really good at constructing bad outcomes and hyper-focusing on them, so that, an example I always use is like, I get a message, like say from somebody I work with over the weekend. It says, hey, on Monday we're going to have a meeting. I need you to be there. And I think, we're going out of business. Or I'm getting fired, and I'm not going to find a job after this, and I am going to be homeless, we're going to lose the house, we're fucked totally. And that is, it's hard, I've practiced a lot and I've gotten better at it, but I will hyper-focus on that scenario, or keep constructing other scenarios and keep iterating over and over and over, and I can't stop my brain from doing that. And that's really, really not fun. It's hard to do that, hard to deal with that. Now, I take some medication. That's one of the ways that I help to try to control this kind of stuff. And I take a few different things, something called Lexapro, which is an SSRI, it's kind of like Prozac. Boostbar, which is anti-anxiety medicine, and works often with SSRIs. It seems to increase the effectiveness of SSRIs. Strattera, which is a medication for ADD and ADHD, which is interesting, at least in the US, it is the only medication on the market that is not an amphetamine. Everything else that you would take for ADD or ADHD is an amphetamine, which is why you see a lot of abuse from that kind of stuff, people taking Adderall and things like that. And as my psychiatrist, who prescribes these medications to me, said, amphetamines should probably not be taken by people with anxiety disorders. So that is something that I can't really do. That's the medication I can have, and it's not a great idea for me to take the other stuff. I think Klonopin is a tranquilizer. It's kind of like Xanax or things like that, and I take that on an as-needed basis to try to kind of calm myself down if I'm having a really problematic situation. So I take those are the medications I take every day to help me out and just get through, and that's a good mix for me, and it's taken me years. I started seeing a therapist when I was 13. I started taking medication, I was probably still 13. And I have been iterating on that medication gradually for that entire time. And I'm 40 years old now. So almost 30 years. You know, things change, how you react to stuff changes, how you figure stuff out changes. And so I've gradually changed the kinds of stuff that I take. I also see a therapist every 2 weeks, and I talk about why I try to figure out the things I do, and come up with strategies to address those. Did you have a question?
I do. Do you ever take a vacation from your meds?
No, that is normally an extremely bad idea.
Sure, I understand. Just want to know, because as you said, things change.
Yes. If I was going to take a vacation from my meds, it's an extremely bad idea to do that on my own.
Oh, no, I'm not suggesting doing it on your own.
If my doctor said, hey, you know what, you should take a vacation from your meds, okay. I think it is very unlikely that they would suggest taking a sudden vacation. Now, occasionally you see people who taper off, but you have to be very, very careful, because a common pattern that you see with people say, hey, I'm feeling a lot better, I probably don't need those meds anymore. Then strangely, they stop taking the meds and they feel like shit.
Yeah, that happened to me actually.
Yes, don't do that. The meds have a lot to do often. Now, I have seen very occasionally have seen weird cases where people were like, I really don't think this is working for me, take it off. I cannot advise anybody to do that. That is not a decision you should make on your own. So have I ever taken a vacation? No.
Okay.
And I think it is a very good idea that I have not taken a vacation from those meds. So, also the funny thing is, a vacation, I don't know. I think the meds help me. I think it would not be a vacation to stop taking them. While working with my psychiatrist. A psychiatrist, just to be clear so everybody understands, a psychiatrist is an MD who is specifically trained in psychiatry and can prescribe you medications, as opposed to a psychologist who is not an MD and cannot prescribe you medication. A psychiatrist who I work with who prescribes the medications, I think that we just work together to figure out the best options. And so maybe we could reduce the dosage, maybe we should increase the dosage, maybe we should try a different medication, and things like that. At least in my case, I think it will be extremely unlikely that I would ever stop taking this medication. Unless I found some
I'm not advocating.
Oh, I know. The thing is, and the only reason why I'm kind of adamant about it is a lot of people do that.
I've had a friend who
Yeah.
had some issues.
Yeah.
He started taking some meds. All of a sudden, he found work, and things were turning well.
Yep.
And then he said, "Okay, I don't need this anymore."
Yep.
And boom, the job went away, and he
Yep.
just fell back, and he never went back. And this had been decades now. So it was heartbreaking. I agree.
And it's a very, very common pattern. I'm going to move on, but I would love to hear more comments about. No, I think it's a good point to bring up.
I did not mean to.
It's a great point to bring up. I also see a therapist. I don't just take medication. I also see a therapist and do talk therapy. And I go every 2 weeks and I talk about how and why I do the things that I do. I do a lot of self-examination, I talk out a lot of stuff, and we come up with strategies to address those things. The most common thing that I do is I do a thing called cognitive behavior therapy. And I work with that with my therapist to examine and break down the processes that I have where something happens. What do I feel based on that? What do I think based on that? What do I feel based on that? And what action do I take from that? Breaking down those processes and then figuring out how to change that is a hard process, and it is one that takes a lot of practice, but has proven to be very effective, particularly with people with anxiety disorders. I also do a little bit sort of things with dialectical behavior therapy, which deals a lot with sort of like how you interact with your thoughts, how you are, when people talk about being present, there's lots of exercises that you do about being present, and to not worry about what's going to happen in the future and what's going to happen in the past, because those things aren't real. The only thing that's real is right now, right here. And you do certain things to sort of focus yourself on the present. Most of us spend most of our time in the future and the past. And that is very effective for figuring out how to interact with thoughts and particularly give negative thoughts no more weight than positive thoughts. Anyway, so those are things that I work with. Now, one of the things that my experience has been, particularly until I sort of started talking about this a little more widely, was that I felt very alone and unlike anyone else. And that is a common theme I think you'll see with lots of folks who deal with this kind of stuff, is that you feel like you're the only person who deals with this stuff. You are unlike anyone else, and it seems like just being around other people and the way that you react, it seems to be so different than the way other people react to stuff, that it is very isolating. You might even say a common thing is that it's very othering. You feel like you're not like anybody else. You feel like you're not part of social groups, and you feel very, very alone and isolated. And the thing that I know I experienced for many years is that I felt like there was just something wrong with me, that there was something broken in me, that I was made wrong, and it was never going to be right, and it was never going to be okay. That ultimately things were going to fall apart, that my career was going to fail, that my relationships were going to fail, that I was going to fail, and that I was simply not made to exist in this culture and in this society. And that loneliness that you have from that feeling is absolutely crushing and destructive. And that feeds on itself. That makes all of this stuff worse. Far, far worse. Because you feel hopeless. Because you feel like you're the only person who does it. The thing is, there's actually a lot of people who are like this. And in fact, I would even say the word that it is not particularly abnormal to have issues like this. In fact, it is quite common. And so I want to talk a little bit about sort of how this affects us on a societal level. And the first thing that you see is most studies, at least done in the US, and I think it's pretty consistent, at least in North America, it varies from population to population, but if you look across the whole, or from group to group, if you look across the entire population, most studies that you'll see will peg it at about 20% of the population at any given time is dealing with some kind of mental health issue. Now, that can be a bunch of different things. Anxiety disorders are the most common of those. Depression is very common. There's also things like personality disorders, borderline personality disorders, mood disorders, things like that. Oftentimes, numbers get mixed with, do you have substance abuse disorders or not? I would argue that most substance abuse disorders are coping mechanisms for other things that are going on. But one of the things that I do not think that we are abnormal or a weird part of the population. You're talking about a very large part of the population that deals with this. And so as a consequence, I think it's interesting. I think we have to kind of stop thinking about that as this is something that, well, there's sort of this weird group of people who just deal differently. Actually, there's a pretty large group of people who have different kinds of issues like that, and it's pretty common. Now, if we talk about sort of what that means, what it means to deal with certain kinds of things, and so I found this a useful comparison. And this is stuff from the Global Burden of Disease study that was done by the World Health Organization in 2002, I think. And there hasn't been a global one since then, but they talked about this here. So this was, a few years back. But they compared what the level of disability, the impact on productivity, the impact on being able to sort of live what we think of as a normal life. That moderate depression had a similar impact to something like multiple sclerosis or severe asthma. Both of which I think we would think of as, those are kind of debilitating. Those are serious things. And that severe depression was similar to quadriplegia. Depression has lots of physical manifestations, including things they call like motor retardation and stuff like that. When you feel like you're depressed and you're like, I don't want to move, I don't want to get up, I don't want to do anything, actually that is not just like, well, in your brain somehow. Your brain and the physical processes in your body are tightly intertwined. And so it is in fact a state where your brain is telling your body to do those things. You feel weak and tired and hopeless because your brain is telling you to do those things. It is actually making your muscles not move the same way. It is inhibiting your abilities to do those things. And so it is not just sort of just snap out of it, kid. It is in fact a reaction that happens, and it's not like you can just get up and run around. You just don't feel like it. You're not just being lazy. These disabilities are very, very debilitating. And we talk about this disease burden, and this comes from this same World Health Organization survey. And this disease burden is a metric they came up with, which has math in it, so I won't get into it because I don't understand it. But it's premature death, kind of plus years living with a disability, and just trying to measure sort of the impact on a population of different kinds of disorders, diseases, what have you, and the kind of level of impact that they have on a population. And what they found and what they stated in this study was that the burden of mental disorders is the largest of all the disorder categories in North America, and again, it's larger than cardiovascular disease, and it's larger than cancer. Now, those two have higher mortality rates, significantly higher mortality rates. But the years lived with the disability, that impact that it has for a long time on your ability to be productive, to be happy, to be live a life that you enjoy, was significantly higher. And a quote from that study: in all regions, so this is all over the world, neuropsychiatric conditions are the most important causes of disability, accounting for around 1/3 of years lost to disability among adults aged 15 years and over. That is a very significant number. That is a huge number. That is something that is very difficult to ignore. That is not an outlier. That is not a sort of strange condition that it is hard to control for. That it's like, the vast majority of the population is like this, and it's hard, how do we accommodate this very, very tiny part of the population that has to deal with certain things, and that, the investment. This is an enormous amount of people dealing with this. If we talk about economic costs, that's from this PDF, you can look at it at the bottom. They list mental health conditions, they say are the second leading cause of workplace absenteeism. Just talk about the workplace here. Now we're just talking about depression. Workers with depression lose 5.6 hours a week. Workers without depression lose 1.5. That is a very significant difference. They tag, and these numbers, sometimes it's hard to figure out kind of where it comes from a little bit, but depression, again, just dealing with depression, which is just a common, but not even the most common group of disorders that you deal with when you're talking about mental health issues, 43.7 billion in absenteeism from work, lost productivity, direct treatment. That's a huge number. That's very impactful. Now, in September of last year, we did a survey, a mental health and tech survey, and just trying to talk about attitudes towards mental health issues, and also try to get a feel for sort of how supportive workplaces were for mental health. Particularly in the U.S., the primary conduit for healthcare is your workplace, and also the other way of looking at it is where do you spend most of your time? I think most people spend a large portion of their time, maybe most of their time, especially in a social group, in the workplace. So that has a really significant impact on how you view things, on the what's the social group you're interacting with the most. Things like that. Now, I'm only dealing with people in the U.S. because different countries have other ideas about how to do healthcare. And this is only non-self-employed people, because self-employed people is a little bit different. But there's some numbers that we can get from that I think are useful. There's still several hundred of the results that we got back that I think give us a good idea of what we're looking at. So one of the questions we asked was, do you feel that your employer takes mental health as seriously as physical health? And I want you to think about these questions in the light that at least 1 in 5 people in every workplace is dealing with something at any given time that would be classified as a mental health disorder. That is, causes enough disruption in productivity and disruption in happiness and things like that to be classified as a disorder, as opposed to not maybe something that's kind of, it's really based on the intensity, right, and how and when it's happening. So that's why it's a disorder as opposed to something else. So keep that in mind. Keep in mind the large numbers of people who are dealing with this. Do you feel that your employer takes mental health as seriously as physical health? 49% said yes, that's okay. 25% said no, quarter, and 25% said don't know, which probably means that our employer has probably never talked about it. Hasn't come up. Do you think that discussing a health issue with your employer would have negative consequences? Now, if we look at physical health, 77% said no. I think that bears out a little bit based on the kind of discussions that we had at the beginning, right? No is only 4%. Mental health, the no is only about a third. Yes, certainly is a quarter, and the maybe goes up to 2/5. So a majority of people are at least a maybe, if not a yes, that there would be negative consequences. Would you bring up a health issue with a potential employer in an interview? This is very key. I hear about this a lot. How do I talk about this kind of stuff in an interview? And I want to clarify that at least in the U.S., I would hope there's similar protections like that in Canada. In Canada, it is illegal to not hire somebody because of a physical or mental disorder or disability, unless it interferes with their ability to do the job. With physical, it's 44%. They would not bring it up. And I can kind of understand that. Well, maybe it's not relevant. You don't want to give somebody a reason to feel like, oh, this is going to be a problem. Maybe it's 44%. Yes is 12%. Kind of understandable if you wouldn't bring that kind of stuff up. Well, let's look at mental health issues. Almost nobody would bring it up. Be afraid that that would be an absolute red flag. No, there's no way I'm going to hire this person. Maybe it's 4%. Only 2% of people said yes. 2%. I'm one of those 2%, but I guarantee you the reason I feel like I can do that is because I am very loud-mouthed about this stuff. And I get to pick and choose because I'm lucky that if I'm looking for a job, sometimes people come to me and talk to me about it. I'm real lucky in that respect. Most people are not in that position, and most people are like these folks that there's no way in hell they would bring it up. Do you know the options for mental health care your employer provides? Yes, said 40%, but only 40% of people knew. Not sure, which kind of seems like a no. Maybe there's some. 27% no, about a third. Absolutely not. I do not know what those are. Does your employer provide resources to learn more about mental health issues and how to seek help? Key parts of having a wellness program that involves mental health as well as physical health. No is 38%. Only about a quarter said yes. 37% don't know. What are their employers doing? What are they doing? Is your anonymity protected if you choose to take advantage of mental health or substance abuse treatment resources? Another thing that's protected under U.S. law, by the way. Again, I don't know about Canada, but I would assume it's similar. Yes was only 30%. Don't know is 2/3 people. Employers didn't even bother to mention it. No, disturbingly, 2% feel very bad for those 2% of people. How easy is it for you to take medical leave for a mental health condition? I think a key question when you're talking about whether we take mental health issues seriously. Can I take time off if I'm dealing with something? There's a decent percentage, higher than I expected, almost a third, said very easy or somewhat easy. That they're in a position where they could say, man, I'm having a tough time, feel like you don't have to lie about it. Say I've got something else going on. Somewhat difficult, very difficult was a smaller percentage. Over half don't know though. Employers have never mentioned it, never told them, never said anything about it. And here's the key, sick workers don't work. No matter what's going on, whether you're barfing your guts out because you have a stomach bug, or you're barfing your guts out because you have severe anxiety about something. People don't work, or they're significantly less productive. Only 41% of people in the US with a mental disorder receive professional help in a given year. Most people aren't getting help. And if we're just talking about depression again, we're just talking about depression here, half the people who seek help for depression wait 8 years or more. That's 8 years they didn't get any treatment whatsoever. And the longer it's delayed, the more difficult recovery can be. And there's good evidence to suggest that people with mental health problems are more likely to seek help if someone close to them suggests it. Who are we close to day to day? Who do we interact with most day to day? I would say mostly it's our team members. It's our leads, it's our supervisors, it's our bosses. Those are the people we interact with every day. I interact with those people more than the people I'm married to or with my family. That may not be a good thing, but it's the truth. I spend way more time talking to them. Now, how do we change that? How do we make this workplace safe for people who have these kinds of issues? And there's a few things that we can kind of get into. One of the things we're trying to do with open sourcing mental illness is to try to develop a document that will really detail these kinds of things. But I want to give you at least an overview of what you have to look at. The first thing absolutely you have to do is to get buy-in from C-level. Are there any CEOs, CTOs, high up kinds of folks here? I want you to raise your hand. Okay, we got a couple. Yeah? Well, the key thing here is this, is that in any kind of organization, the values come from the top down. You have to get buy-in from those folks. They have to think it matters. Now, I think I presented plenty of damn evidence that it matters. That it's having a significant impact on even just not the let's treat humans like humans, but it has a significant impact on productivity, which has a significant impact on financials. But it is a key thing to get buy-in from them. And if you want to do that, you talk with your executives. And you have to keep in mind, a lot of executives, a lot of folks who are high up, who are in supervisory positions or things like that, they are probably scared. They are scared because of legal and personal fears that they have. It's not necessary. You'll run into a few people who are like, I don't know, man, I pay you salaries to do your fucking job. I hear those stories sometimes. I run into a little bit of that. And yeah, there's some dickheads out there. But the vast majority of people, I think, want to help other people and want them to be successful. Because it's in their interest and just in the interest of being a good person and being a person who is interested in how other people are living and being happy. But there's a lot of concern about legal issues. There's a lot of concern about how's this going to impact the company. And I don't know what to do. And they freeze up and they don't know what to do. And maybe HR tells them, don't talk to them. I've heard that. I've heard people say, there's a friend of mine who brought this up, who said that he went and talked, he felt comfortable enough going and talking to his supervisor. And he starts talking to his supervisor about some of the stuff he's been dealing with. And his supervisor says, okay. And this is somebody he has a pretty good relationship with. He says, oh, wait. I need you to stop. You can't talk to me about this. I need you to go down to HR and talk to them. Can you imagine saying, dude, I busted my leg. I'm really having a tough time getting around. Whoa. You're going to need to talk to HR. You can't talk to me about it. I'm sorry, but that is horseshit. And there's plenty of things that you can do. But people are scared. People are scared of that stuff because they don't know what to do. They're afraid that they're going to screw it up and that something bad's going to happen. And maybe they're getting legal advice to like protect themselves at all costs. I don't know. I don't want to live in a culture like that. I think that sucks. And I don't think you have to do it that way. So I think it's important you share research like I kind of presented here and share legal information about this. I mean, that varies from place to place. But what are the things that you have to do? What are the things that you can do relatively safely? And go forth with what are the things that we can provide. And I think a key thing is sharing ways to support employees. And oftentimes this stuff is not clear and is not valued or is not brought up in sort of the company culture. Some of these values, discouraging work hour martyrdom. How many of you work more than 40 hours a week regularly? How about 50? You work more than 50? All right. Well, you people have a problem.
Preach it.
It is one thing if you choose to do that of your own accord. And I often choose to do that of my own accord. If it is expected in your company that that is what you have to do, there's a problem with your company because there's plenty of evidence to suggest, and if anyone does any research on it, that it poorly affects your productivity and very poorly affects your levels of stress, anxiety, and as a consequence, physical health too. Stress and anxiety tie directly into physical health. They're not just something that happens only in your brain. They have significant physical, they cause significant physical issues. So if people are telling you that, that is wrong and they do not have your health in mind. They are more concerned about trying to squeeze every last ounce of productivity out of you as opposed to maybe not burning you out to the point where you keel over and die. Enforcing vacation before it's needed. Why would we want to wait for somebody to burn out and then take a vacation? How about we have a vacation a little bit before that time? You know? Telling people, no, take time off, take these days off, do it. You need to because it's what you need to do to be healthy. Making sure that there is coverage, equivalent coverage for mental health, as well as other things that they call physical health. And whether that designation and that separation makes a ton of sense, they're treated differently. Making sure that there is good coverage for mental health. Providing transparency in the hiring process that includes company practices for dealing with mental health issues. That would directly address that interview stuff that I'm talking about. And also wellness strategies that we'll get into. But talking about those kinds of wellness strategies. And so that people understand at that top level why these things are important. The second thing I think that needs to happen is that I think people need to take the mental health first aid courses. I really think all supervisors, all managers, who here is a team lead, oversees anybody in any respect, doesn't have to be an HR sense. Raise your hand if you do. Ben, don't you do that?
Anymore.
You used to.
I don't anymore.
I know it's embarrassing. All right, well, a lot of you do. Real backslide, guys. Come on.
Thank you.
Executives, managers, HR, employees, things like that. It is super cheap to get this mental health first aid training. It's available in 22 different countries, including Canada, including the US. I did it for $50 to do it on my own, and typically you can do it for significantly less, especially if you do it as a group. I guarantee you're going to use this way more than traditional first aid. And what it teaches you to do is to interact with people who may be showing signs of having mental health issues. To identify if they're in a crisis situation and what to do if they're in a crisis situation where they're maybe apt to hurt themselves. And even if they're not, to listen empathetically and to aid them in seeking help. Most people people don't know how to do those things. And I know that because people keep coming to me and asking me how to do it. Because I've talked about this stuff a lot. And they don't know what to do. And this taught me tons of stuff. For things that I should do, things I shouldn't do. Very helpful. It's mentalhealthfirstaid.org. You can find out more about that. Those are the U.S. numbers, but you can also get, there's going to be stuff in Canada. It's probably just .ca. I don't know. You'll find it. It was started in Australia, and on the Australian site, if you just look up mental health first aid on your popular internet search engine, you will find what the Canadian version is, if you want that. Knowing your local resources. One of the things that's hard, at least in the US it is, there is no Yelp for mental health resources. There are oftentimes lists of, say, like registered therapists and doctors, but there is no information about, say, like local support groups. Other kinds of stuff about like places that do work with people who maybe can't afford to pay for it. Things of that nature. It's really key, and a couple places that you can talk to the National Alliance of Mental Illness, Mental Health America. Again, I'm in the wrong country, so there's probably some Canadian equivalent for this stuff. But talking to those kinds of groups, the local chapters in your area, and asking them, I want to have information about local resources available for people with mental health issues because I want to compile them all in one place where everybody can access them. Not hidden in some 200-page employee handbook that you got handed with a bunch of other shit when you got hired and never looked at. That is not how you do it. That is not how you make things available to people. So it's very important to know your local resources, because it is likely that if you just go on the internet and look up stuff, you're going to miss stuff. You have to actually get on the phone and talk to people. And there's people, local, boots on the ground folks, who are going to be able to tell you stuff that you had no idea about and there was no way for you to find. I guarantee it. Knowing your coverage. And this is a key thing. You got to make mental health coverage transparent. It has to be clear how to find it. Again, you don't hide it in a bunch of, these weird benefit things that I can't figure out. What does this mean? What the fuck's a deductible? What is this shit? I don't know. I don't know what any of that stuff is. And it's very hard to figure out. It should be transparent. There should be company disclosure of benefits plans. That should be very obvious. That should be very easy to find. That should be presented in multiple ways. And there should always be an opportunity to meet with your insurance rep. Again, this is maybe more U.S. folks, but there has to be an opportunity to meet with an insurance rep to answer questions about what you can do and what you can't do. Fifth thing is actively engaging and educating. That really has kind of three aspects to it. This is awareness, resources, and promotion of wellness. Awareness is really talking about what it's like to have these kinds of stuff. And maybe a little bit about how, the level of impact that it has. And the stuff I talked about at the beginning, that's awareness. Originally, when I started talking, I was doing awareness talks. It was pure awareness talks. And there's good organizations that handle stuff like that, like mhprompt.org. Prompt specifically pays for people to come talk to tech conferences and talk to tech organizations about mental health issues and raise awareness. Awareness is really, really key. Because I guarantee you, every single time I give this talk, there's people who come up to me and say, yes, thank you for saying that, because I deal with that too, and I'm afraid to talk about it. Or I get emails like this, I was at your conference, I saw your talk, I wanted to talk to you then, but I couldn't because I was around my fellow employees. I'm sorry, but that is fucked up. Really fundamentally wrong that we allow that to happen. And we can't anymore. This is one, nothing to be ashamed of, and two, something that there are resources and treatment available to those people, but they're too damn afraid to say it because they're afraid they're going to be thought of as not competent at their job, or that people are going to get weirded out by it. Well, how lazy on our part is it that we allow that environment to persist? All right, I'm done. I'll calm down. Okay. So awareness issues, that's a big part of it. You know, I put all of my videos up online, CC licensed, so anybody can use them. Anybody can use them. You can show them at a lunch thing. You can do anything you want with it. Do the slides, it's fine. Just attribution, because it's important I get my attribution. But yes, making sure that resources are available, local things, online things, tools. There are some really good phone apps to help with this stuff. I found a good one that really deals with dialectical behavior therapy called Stop, Think, and Breathe, that just takes you through meditation stuff. That's a key part of dialectical behavior therapy and is enormously helpful to me. There's lots of tools available. There's like a forum specifically for developers called DevPress. There's checkupapp.org that scans social media for signs of suicidal thoughts. There's other things. Somebody just sent me an email and I can't remember what it was, but it was, they sent me a tweet and I asked for more info and I didn't get a chance to look at it. CheckupApp is an open source application. There's lots of stuff available out there. And making those things available to everybody so that everybody in your organization can find that stuff quickly. And then promotion of mental wellness is really, really key because it is so impactful. It is at least as impactful as promotion of physical wellness. And oftentimes the things that you do promote both at the same time because I always kind of get fuzzy about it. I kind of mentioned this before. Mental health issues and physical health issues are deeply intertwined. It is very hard to make a case that there's a separation between those two, that they're magically different. Really, the problem is that with mental health issues, we don't really understand how to treat them effectively. We know some things seem to work, and some things seem to work effectively, but we don't really understand why. Why is it that just pure medical treatment, just pure drug treatments, that with the processes as we understand them, help some people but don't help other people fully? They may aid a little bit, but they don't really fix problems. Why is that? We don't understand because we don't understand the processes. If you ever look at like the medication stuff about most stuff that's for mental health issues, mostly the descriptions are, we think it does something like this. And it didn't kill the rats, so we started giving it to people. They didn't die either, most of them. And so it seems to help. And that's the best understanding we have, because our understanding of those processes in the brain is very poor compared to the processes of, well, dude's leg broke, this is how to fix it. We got that stuff down pretty well. We just don't have these things well for how does psychological stuff do things to the brain and make it behave differently, and why does it do that? But I guarantee you, there is a deep connection between things that are physical and things that are supposedly just mental, and they're deeply intertwined. So educating. And so when I talk about promotion of mental wellness, it's really life skills to prevent illness. And it often prevents illness in both of those seemingly separate areas. Educating about psychology and psychiatry in a public forum. What are those things? How can those things help you? Stuff like that. Teaching techniques and best practices, particularly dealing with burnout and stress. Teaching mindfulness, like I talked about, with dialectical behavior therapy and things like that, mindfulness, being present, those kinds of things. They have a significant impact on how we deal with stress and how we deal with those kinds of things. Having peer-to-peer support groups or being able to identify where those are in a community, really important. Promoting proactive practices. Some things like, and these are not magic bullets, they don't solve all your problems for you, but things like exercise, nutrition, rest, social inclusion, peer support. Those last two are incredibly important. And the sixth thing is supporting research. One of the things that, we've had some, one of the things that's the case is that there's been almost no research done inside the tech community about how mental health issues impact us specifically. What is specific about mental health issues with us? Is there a prevalence of certain kinds of mental health issues inside these communities? We don't really know because almost no research has been done. There's lots of anecdotal stuff I can tell you, but we don't really have good hard information about that. And to really support mental health in the tech community, to best support it, we need more research to examine the prevalence of illness and how to best practice that stuff to help people. Because we don't know how this group differs from other groups regarding mental health. We don't have any information about it. It was news to me. I did my survey, and I did it because I kind of didn't really feel like I had information for it. But then working with other folks who had a lot more background in this, they said, this is great. There's almost no information like this. Nobody's doing this stuff. So what's the upside for this? And I took a lot of this from something that was in the US, but I think it applies pretty much anywhere. What's the upside in doing these practices of increasing, making workplaces safer and more supportive for people who are having mental health issues? The first thing is you get higher productivity and motivation because employees feel valued. Employees feel secure and they work more effectively if their employers demonstrate a commitment to their well-being. If you're in a group and that group demonstrates to you that they give a shit about you, you're going to be more loyal and you're going to work harder because you feel good there. If you don't get that feeling, that's not a fun place to be and you're not going to be really motivated to do stuff. Reduced absenteeism. We talked about how absenteeism is affected by at least by depression. And just in general, workplace stress, which is a trigger for so much of this stuff, is a major cause of absenteeism. And so helping employees manage their stress, their overall mental health, boost productivity just because they're not out of the office so much. Or when they are at the office, they're a lot more engaged. This is a huge issue in the U.S., health insurance cost containment. Instituting these health and wellness programs help hold down health insurance rate hikes. Because if you can treat people earlier on and you can get them help and help them learn how to manage the things that they deal with, it is less likely that they're going to have some sort of catastrophic issue that costs everybody a ton of money. Loyalty and retention, it really goes back to this, but if you have mental health friendly practices, it's documented that businesses that have those practices have remarkably low turnover rates. And you save money in terms of cost recruitment, new employee orientation and training. Turnover is a huge issue at most tech companies that I know of. That's the thing you want to avoid as much as possible. You get to hire and promote the most qualified people because you openly support mental health practices. And mental health friendly practices, You increase your pool of qualified applicants. More people are interested in working with you because that is part of having a healthy and supportive and inclusive and good to work at workplace. Diversity and acceptance and respect in the workplace, this is part of that. At the end of the day, what this is about is practicing empathy and accepting and encouraging people who have different experiences and different perspectives. So this is just like any other aspect of diversity matters, acceptance matters, respect matters in the workplace. It includes people who live with mental health issues. So in becoming more inclusive, businesses they're going to thrive. There's good evidence that embracing diversity has a direct positive impact on companies. And it sets a standard for others. All right, I'm going to wrap up here. I've been talking a while. Now, we had this thing as open source mailings 2015, and this was this fundraising campaign that I did. Chris, you keep looking angry at me.
It's my natural state.
All right, that's fine. Resting anger face. So I needed to do fundraising to pay for travel because a lot of conferences, not this one, which is generous enough to help get speakers here, but we need to do fundraising for travel. And at the time, I had been doing a lot of that through Prompt. Prompt was figuring out different financial resources that they had available to them to help pay for people to get out there. And they have now, which is great. But at the time, it was kind of up in the air. So we had a goal of $5,000. And so that was it. We did set up this Indiegogo campaign. I said, $5,000, that's going to get me to probably like 2 or 3 conferences. It is expensive to go to conferences. Probably most of you paid for it. And it is super expensive. So yeah, I had a goal of $5,000 to get me to 2 or 3 conferences that didn't pay my way. So our time to that goal, how long it took us to reach that goal, was 2 hours. Which was pretty cool. And the total that we raised was $13,600. And those are U.S. American dollars, let me tell you. So one of the cool things is that with this extra money, we're able to starting to develop documentation with the help of people who are actually experts in these fields to make tech workplaces safer for folks with mental health issues. So we can bring a document that says, okay, you know these 5, 6 things that I talked about, these are things that you need to do in the workplace. Here's how you do that. Here's a map for that. Here's actionable information. Here's a how-to document. All right? And yes, I will still take your money because you'd be surprised. We will still take your money. So if you want to give me more money, which would actually be kind of helpful, you go to JMP OSME 2015. Now, this is a list of, I think this is up to date. If anybody has given money in the past few days, maybe it's not. But this is a list of all the different donors that I had, which is really awesome. All these people here donated to the campaign, and this is so great and so humbling because all these people thought, this is an important thing to talk about, and I'm going to give you money and trust that you're not going to, just fly to Denmark and go crazy with it in Denmark and get crazy there. So I want to thank every single one of the folks who are listed here. I want to specifically thank a couple of people. Camille Wilson, Joanna Wu, Jerry Cody designed our logo, which is super awesome. And you might see a couple t-shirts around here with that on it. Jennifer Arkulian, and so many more. They've made this talk a better talk, and they've made it possible for me to be here. I also want to thank the company that I work for, which is a company called Graph Story, and they're not a sponsor, so I can't go into it too much. But without being at a supportive company that thought this stuff was important, I could not be here because they let me go and do this stuff and are not like, bro, come on, really need you working on stuff. And and I do need to work on stuff, and that's another thing, but they don't give me shit about it. They say, this is important, it's really awesome that you're doing this, and without their support, I couldn't be here. So give them a little dap if you can. And then there's this fucking guy. And, without Chris being cool with this and saying, okay, we try to run a funny podcast and this doesn't sound funny, but I guess we'll talk about it. I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't be doing this. And I think it's really significant that Chris has been very supportive of this. And I want to thank him personally for that. But I need your help. I need you to talk about this stuff. I need you to share what we're talking about. I need you to learn more. And talk about it, email it, and tweet and post on your Facebooks and your Tweeters. Please do it now. Don't wait. Don't forget and say, oh, that's something I'll think about. If anything I've shown you, or any of these URLs or messages or words meant something to you, please talk about it. There are videos, slides, and resources up at funkatron.com/OSME. All of that stuff is Creative Commons licensed, and you can use it any way you want. You want to give me more money? I'm not going to let it. Believe me, it helps. You can go there, and that's what I got. Thank you for listening. If there's a joined in link here, 15750, if you want to look it up. And again, this is links to my page with all the videos and a donation if you want to give a little bit. That'd be super helpful. And that's what I got for today. Thank you so much for being here. Do we have a couple minutes for questions?
Like 1 minute.
We got 1 minute. Okay, give me a quick question here. Go ahead.
I would like to ask, do this in the road, but there are three issues why I think it wouldn't work, even though I really want to do it.
Yeah, sure.
The first is, everyone's a contractor.
I'm having a little trouble hearing you. Can you
Everyone's a
speak?
contractor.
Everyone's a contractor. Yep.
Everyone's a contractor. Second, everyone is global.
Yep.
Everyone's in a different country with different laws and different support and so on.
Sure.
And the third is, when people bring it up, they say they want it private. They want to do it themselves privately. And
Yep.
obviously we can't violate that as a...
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, if you're asking,
How do we do it?
if you're not just saying fuck you, and if you're saying, how do I pull that off? I think this is, my feeling is that you would probably do something like this. You don't have to, and in fact, it's probably not a good idea to say, hey, we're going to have a group thing and everybody's going to talk about all the stuff they deal with that's private to them. So you don't do that. But what you can do is you can say, hey, here's something that we can all watch. I'm going to share resources with you. I'm going to make this stuff, I'm going to raise that awareness for you. Nobody has to come out and say, doesn't have to be like me and go and yell about this stuff and like, act as a confessional, do a confessional process every time, we do this. It doesn't need to be like that, but what you can do is you can say, make it clear that this is a safe place, that this is an understanding place, that you're not going to get judged and you're not going to be treated differently because of this. And you do that, I think, by raising awareness and talking about those kinds of things. And it doesn't need to be anybody specifically saying, I deal with this. But you can say a lot of the stuff that I said in here and not reveal anything about anybody. And then what you do is you say, if anybody wants to talk about this stuff, you can talk to me, or you talk to whoever's the person who would be a person who kind of deals with that. We can talk privately. That's totally fine. Nobody needs to, and make sure that people feel respected. People feel valued. That's the key. All that other stuff is about making people feel respected and valued and not afraid to deal with this stuff. Not feel like I don't have any options. So you can do a ton of stuff about that's just raising awareness and talking about, hey, if you are having problems, here's things that you can do. You can talk to me, we can work and try to figure out how to help that stuff with you one-on-one, and it is absolutely, you can trust me that I'm not going to reveal this to anybody else. If you can establish that, the other stuff is kind of like, it's just the devil, it's just the details. The details of like, well, how do I do it here? How do I do it there? So yeah, you're not going to probably have a centralized resource for stuff. But what you might have is, here's some places to start. Here's some tools. Here's some things that you can work with. Here's applications. Here's things that help you with this. Here's things that help you with that. Here's some stuff we can all do in terms of managing stress. So there's a lot of this stuff you can still apply. So if you can only apply 60% of it, that's 60% better than 0% of it. And that still is extremely helpful, I think. So, yeah. I think that's probably about it, but I'm going to be around. You just asked me. Also, I have stickers, and I have 3 t-shirts of all different sizes. I have a small, a large, and an XL. And if people come up to me and commit that they're going to go do mental health first aid, I will give you a t-shirt. It's normally something that you have to donate $75 to get. So if that's one of your sizes and you're willing to commit to that, then I'm going to give you a t-shirt. So I got stickers, I got all this stuff. Please come up and talk to me. If you got any questions, you just want to chat, absolutely, I'm here. Thanks so much. I appreciate you being here.